So I pray. Amen.
Good morning. I want to talk today about forgiveness and just some back story on this. When I first came to this church 3 years ago, one of the first services that I came to, we're doing the Unforgettable series, and Keith was here and he was talking about forgiveness, something that happened to his family and that they were able to forgive this person. And I listened to it and I said, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to forgive this particular situation. And so Keith and I kind of connected. We didn't talk that day, but we connected, and ultimately Keith and I have been together for 3 years, and he does counseling, so we've been together, and it started with Unforgettable and then with forgiveness. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's just some context. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. Typically, the oldest is the experimental child, and that is me. My sister, Linda, who is a year and 2 days, she's probably just as much as I am one of the experimental children. And I think back often, and the things that my younger siblings did, we would never be allowed to do it. We would be grounded for a couple years. But anyways, I don't know if anybody in here has ever watched The Brady Bunch. So that was my family, right? We grew up in a town called Midland, Michigan. And for those who don't know where Midland, Michigan is, if you're from Michigan, you always do this. You hold your hand up like this, say Michigan's like a mitten, and then you point to where you live. So Midland's right here between your index finger and your thumb. So Midland's a town, 40,000 people, Midwestern, great place to raise a family. At the time, my dad worked for Dow Chemical. Great job, great family, and we did what you do in a Midwestern town, right? When I was growing up, Memorial Day, you would go downtown to Main Street and you would be part of the Memorial Day parade. They had fire trucks, nothing fancy, obviously, but that's what we did. And then after that, we'd go to a friend's house of my parents and we'd make homemade ice cream and play softball. And, back then, they didn't have electric ice cream makers, so you're cranking rock salt into this, and so obviously we had to take turns. But that was my life. It was nice. I didn't have a care in the world. And my grandfather was the Presbyterian minister in Midland, very well respected, and he shaped my belief in God and as a Christian. What that meant, and he did it certainly through the pulpit, but more importantly, he did it by what he did, right? So he spoke about it, but more importantly, he did it. And, the love, the unconditional love, talking about the love of God, and, we were there right with him, and that's what I knew. And I was, at the time, I was blessed to have that experience. As a family, we would go to, my grandfather and grandmother lived in a manse. They don't have them anymore, I don't think. But across the street, every Easter, we would do Easter egg hunts. And at Christmas time, we'd go up in the living room, whatever, we'd open Christmas presents. The house was a pretty good-sized house, and they had this, and I think this started my rebellion years, but there's this huge banister that went upstairs, and it was wood. And the one thing that my grandmother said was, whatever you do, don't slide down the banister, okay? So, being the youngster that I was, not only did I slide down the banister, but I slid down front first, and I had a belt on. And yeah, so the belt scratched the heck out of the banister. But anyways, grew up in a great environment, great family. Learned to love the Lord. My grandfather and my father taught me how to fish, which lasted just 2 times. We went out. My grandfather could fish anywhere on the lake and would catch fish. Now, he did have his certain spots guaranteed to catch fish. I never did. He would be catching, reeling in fish, and so like I said, it lasted a couple times. So, great childhood, loved it, no worries. So, we're going to fast forward to the age of 13, and my parents had a really good friend that they met in college. And as a matter of fact, he worked for the same company as my father did, Dow Chemical. Would come over for meals. He had a cottage in northern Michigan at Higgins Lake, and as a family, we would go up there periodically. Again, just a really, really nice place to be. So there would be times that just he and I would go up, and it was fun. I'm thinking, okay, wow, hanging out, riding the boat, just doing all these really neat things. Well, shortly after we started going by ourselves, my childhood came to a screeching halt. He raped me. And it wasn't the first time, or excuse me, it wasn't the last time that it happened. And as a 13-year-old, it's very difficult to process this. But I did know this. I felt dirty. I felt that I wanted it, that I deserved it. It was my fault. And I've lived this way for a majority of my adult life. And I've been through therapy for decades. And I've never been honest with therapists. And there's really, there's 2 people that know my story completely. And I danced around, what happened and all these kind of things. And they actually happen to be here today. My best friend from high school, and still is, drove down from Atlanta, and my fiance, Michelle, is here today. So for me, it doesn't get any better than that, having them here. But my point is that they were the only 2 people that knew this story. And then Keith knew my story, and then Chris knew my story. So there was 4 people in the world that knew my story. And now, I don't know how many people are here, but y'all are going to know my story too. So bear with me. And I will say this, out of my entire family, probably including cousins and aunts, I'm the most emotional one out of the bunch. So you're just going to have to bear with me as we continue on. So when you grow up at the age of 13, you have, for me, it was self-loathing. It was, and I said this, it's just a terrible place to be. When on my way home the first time, I didn't say a word, and he actually asked me this question, and that is something wrong? Okay, so went home. My mom greeted me at the door. I didn't say hi, didn't say anything, went upstairs, locked myself in the room, and I swore that day that I would never, ever tell anyone what happened. And I kept this secret for a long, long time, again, with the exception of Jim and Michelle. So, it's a dirty feeling. It's a feeling of no control. You're lost. You're looking for answers. And I never blamed God. I didn't. I did ask the question, though, why did God let this happen? And that's a question that I've wrestled with for a long time. And what I want to share, too, as you hear the story is I'm going to tell you a lot of things that I did. I did them. Nobody made me do these things. And I want to be really clear about that. So at the age of 13, I started self-medicating. I drank. Drinking went to marijuana. Marijuana went to cocaine. And that's kind of where my life has run since the age of 13. And I did it because I had this huge, big, dark hole. And I don't know if any of you ever have a huge, big, dark hole, but the way that I process is I'm going to fill it up with drugs and alcohol, and that's it. Never going to tell anybody. And so I've done that most of my entire life. I've been in 3 rehabs, stayed sober for a while. The last one, I stayed sober for 16 years. But there's a difference between being sober and not drinking. And what I did was not drinking. I think parts of it I was sober. I was in the rooms of AA, sponsored people, went to meetings. I did all of the things. And I think part of it I was sober, but at the end I was just not. I wasn't sober. I just wasn't drinking. So over the course of probably 30 years, I had four DUIs. I spent time in jail as a result of those. And the reality is this, that I should have had a lot more. My younger days, I'd get pulled over and they'd let me go drive home. But 4 DUIs, time in jail, and I became very, 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 very angry. To be honest with you, I still deal with anger. I would get so angry that I would see the color red. That's how angry I would get, and it's just where I am. So as I'm growing up, I went to college, went to a good college. One of the things that the Lord blessed me with is I'm super competitive, and I played soccer in college and had a good career. The other thing that he did is he blessed me with leadership skills, and so I was the president of the fraternity. I was the president of the college fraternities, the Greek system. I was a co-captain. I was a captain of my soccer team. And I share that with you because I was doing all of these things self-medicating. Doing cocaine in college, smoking pot, drinking. I can remember one night coming home from a fraternity party, and it was really, really cold. And we had been drinking. It was a big trash can filled with, I can't remember the name of it. It's like White Lightning and Punch. And so being an alcoholic, I thought this will be fun. I drank a bunch. On my way back to my room, I fell down and I couldn't get up. And it's the middle of January. Here comes God. I don't know how he did it, but he got me up. made it back. And I share this with you because that was my life. That's what I did. I drank and I drank and I drugged, and I felt that that's who I was. That's how I defined myself. And so that's my college career. And actually a couple times in college that I bought enough cocaine, one of my fraternity brothers, so that we could sell it, make money, and I could continue to do cocaine. So I get out of college, and a year later, I'm married. Wonderful, wonderful young lady. We had dated in college. She was really sweet. And within a year, I was divorced. And there's going to be a pattern through this. But the reason I got divorced was I cheated on her. I cheated on her, and I cheated on her, and I lied about it, and I lied about it. We were divorced a year after we got married. And I share that particular part of the story because that became pretty much what I did my adult life. I was terrible in relationships with women. I was extremely selfish. I only wanted one thing, and when that one thing, I was tired of it, and it was sex, and that's what it was. So I had a career. My career was in the automobile business, and I was fortunate. I was successful at my career, and for 20 years, I was very successful in my career. But still, all the while, and I mentioned earlier that I was in 3 rehabs, and the last one came when I was working for this dealer. And he said, you have a choice. He said, you can either go into rehab and get sober, or I'm going to fire you. So when you this isn't about how much money it was. I'm giving you an example of the choice that I made. I was making $400,000 a year. So my choice was real simple. I'm going to rehab because I'm not going to lose this job. So I went to rehab, was sober for 16 years. I shared that with you. And sober sometimes, but you know, not being sober, which is a dry drunk for those of you who don't know what that is. You just don't drink. And that was in 2004. I got married again, and I had, and still do, 2 wonderful sons. Joshua, who's 30, Jack's 26. They are a gift, and I am so blessed to have both of them. And they've turned out exceptionally well despite me. And I don't say that being funny. I say that because it's somewhat true. Because of the money that I made, I justified being an absentee father and husband. I justified because of the money, we were afforded a very good lifestyle. So I justified not being a good father or husband because of the money, the things that we bought, the houses, the cars, the Rolex watches, the vacations, all of this stuff. And it's just stuff. But that's how I justified it. 12 years later, after I was married, I got divorced. Again, surprising, right? And for the same reason. I was cheating again, lying again. That's just who I became at that particular point. And I've never, ever, and I think I shared this already, but I've never blamed God for where I was or what happened. But again, I don't understand it, why it did. So as I go forward, I worked for the same car dealer. I ran a Honda and a BMW store. And I worked for the same dealer for 19 years and 7 months. And he called me into his office one day. He said, I'm going to have to fire you. And we really were best friends, too. And it wasn't because of alcohol. It wasn't because of cocaine. And I did a lot of it at the dealership. It was because of my anger. I got angry with my employees when something didn't go that way. And it just continued to build and build and build. And so he fired me. And if I can just go back just a bit, I said that I was sober, not drinking for 16 years. So I decided that taking prescription medication wasn't really a drug and that I was still sober because I wasn't drinking or doing cocaine. And filling that hole. So part of this time in being sober, Percocet wasn't filling the hole anymore. And so my self-worth was based on stuff. And that's how I started filling the hole again. The more I could buy, but the rush is that it only lasts for a few moments, and then you're right back. That's the thing about drinking and doing drugs. It's a short period of time with that high, you feel good, and then it's gone. I stopped buying all this stuff, but I figured, hey, here's another way. I'll start gambling. Good idea, right? So if anybody's ever been to Vegas, the reason they have billion-dollar hotels is not because the house loses, right? It's because of people like me. And my gambling got so bad that I would, bet on football, basketball, college, pro. And when you start out, it's like a lot of things. You start out kind of small, a couple $100, and then it's $500. And so the last time I gambled on a basketball game, I bet $40,000. And I would love to tell you that I won, but I did not. So that's another example of trying to fill this black hole. And if I can just go back just for a moment, I said I wasn't going to tell my mom and dad. I wasn't going to tell anybody what happened to me. But that was set up. His name's Tad, by the way. He's dead. But it was set up, and he said this to me. He said, if you tell your mother or father, your father will kill me, and then he will spend the rest of his life in prison. And that's how people like him work. That's just, it's sick. It just is. So, I'm at this point now where, lose $40,000 on a basketball game. And actually, I called my best friend Jim and told him what I had done. And so I figured, okay, well, I can't gamble anymore. And so I get fired, as I mentioned. And I have this huge anger problem. And so I figure, okay, I've been successful. I'm going to take 6 or 8 months off. No big deal. I'll get a job. Well, I couldn't get a job doing what I was doing anymore. And so I moved down to Florida for a bit, stayed with my mom and dad for a while, stayed with my sister, ended up coming back to Richmond, Virginia, which is where we lived. I don't know if I shared that for you or not. We lived in Williamsburg, but I went back to Virginia. And my life pretty much, you're going to say, well, your life was already unraveled, but it started to really unravel. And so when I went to work for this company, a moving van, they said, hey, we'll pay for your move and no problem. So loaded up a moving van, took it. They had to park it for a while till I found a place to live, which I lied to my sister, right? I couldn't get a place to live because my credit was so bad. And so I lied to my sister and brother-in-law and said, hey, will you co-sign on the lease for me? And they said, yeah, that's not a problem. Well, what I didn't tell them was I wasn't on the lease. It was just in their name. So when the apartment complex found out about it, they kicked me out, but they still held my sister and brother-in-law responsible for the rent, which turned out to be somewhere around $4,400. And they were very gracious. They said, hey, pay us $500 a month until it's paid off. We're good. I didn't pay them back during that period of time anything. I could probably have afforded it. It would have been tight, but I didn't. And that's who I was as a person then. That's what I did. I lied. I cheated. I stole. I stole money from my mom to make a car payment, a couple car payments. So after I was fired, I bought a car, and I financed it through CarMax. A couple of years after that, I couldn't afford the car, but they couldn't find the car. So I had a car to drive. So after my family bought all of my stuff out of storage because I couldn't get it out, I couldn't afford to get it out, they took everything, they sold it to recoup the expenses that they incurred having to fly from Charlotte, North Carolina, from Florida to go and pick all of this stuff up that I had accumulated. And some of it was important to the family. Some of it was my grandparents' antiques, my mom and dad's stuff. It had a lot of sentimental value. But I couldn't afford, I just couldn't afford to pay for it. So I was living in this apartment, and I want to just stop real quick. So I met my fiance, actually it was 8 years ago this past July the 7th, and she stuck with me for everything that I did. Was it an easy relationship? No. I made it extremely difficult. And I'll tell you how much she stuck by me. When I lost the apartment, I became homeless. And there's different terminology of homeless. You know, you don't have a home, but you can stay in a hotel, or you can, find some place to stay for a couple weeks. And she lived that life with me. And there aren't many women, and I'm not going to speak for the men in this room, but for me, that would stick through this mess for 7 years. And she did. We got to the point that I didn't have a place to stay. And I ended up sleeping in my car, which was a car I couldn't get a title for. I couldn't get insurance. I couldn't get it registered because I didn't own it. And I say this somewhat in jest. We got to this point, and I said, hey, I'm going to have to sleep in my car. And she said, I'll do anything for you, but I'm not going to sleep in your car with you, which can't blame her, right? So she left, went back home, rightfully so. So I spent, I don't know how many months it was, sleeping in my car. And so I slept in my car in a Publix parking lot. And I did it for a couple reasons. One, it was close enough that I had an iPad that I could connect to the Wi-Fi. So at night when I was sleeping in my car, I had something to do. The other reason was that Publix, I don't know if you know this or not, but they have great big bathrooms. So at night, first thing in the morning, I could go to Publix, I could brush my teeth, sometimes I'd wash my face, change my clothes, go back and sleep in my car. I ended up getting a job, but with no money. So my decision became this. It became, do I buy gas to keep my car running at night in January in Virginia, or do I buy a couple cans of beans? And that was my decision or my dilemma, I guess, for quite a while. I ended up getting a job selling mattresses in Richmond, Virginia, and it was a nice job. It was a job. But I was so embarrassed about my living situation, and I had everything I owned in the back seat of a Honda Accord that I would park at the far end of the parking lot because I didn't want them to see me drive up in a car with all my earthly belongings in it. My anger didn't subside. I was really angry, as I mentioned. But never did I blame God. I asked the question, why would you let this happen periodically throughout my life? But also I'll say this. God was with me. His hands were all over, the imprint of his hand was all over my life. Yeah, sure, I was homeless, I gambled, I did all the bad things. But from one situation to a next, he kept me safe. And so while I was in Virginia, it was probably the lowest point in my life. I didn't have any money to get a hotel room, so I called my sons and I borrowed money from them. So for 3 nights. Well, my intention never was to stay for 3 nights, right? My intention was to go there the first night and kill myself. And I called my insurance broker, and I'd had insurance for a long time. I continued to borrow against it. And I asked him, I said, what's the suicide clause in my life insurance policy? And it was like dead silence on the other end of the phone. And he said, well, it's 2 years. You've had the policy for a long time. And I said, okay, thanks a lot. And my son Joshua and Jack were beneficiaries. So he called my son Joshua and said, hey, your dad's in a bad place. So Michelle, my son Joshua, and there was a couple other people, they called the Richmond Police Department to do a wellness check. And so the first night they came, and I convinced them that I was fine. I didn't need anything. I wasn't going to do anything drastic. The next night I took a lot of sleeping pills and a lot of Percocet and washed it down with vodka, which in most cases would kill most people. But I didn't die. And that's kind of when, I don't know if things started working better or well. I got back with Michelle, but it was still a mess. But God works in mysterious ways. And you're not going to think that this was really a good thing that happened, but 2 days after Christmas last year, Michelle and myself, our townhouse burned down. And I was still driving a car that I couldn't get a license plate for, couldn't get it registered, and didn't have insurance. But when the townhouse burned down, I was able to go buy a car for cash that I could get registered, I could get a title for it, and have insurance, and I didn't have to worry about being pulled over and not having that. So I've been in different parts of my life suicidal, thinking that's the only way out, and it's not, right? So I guess, so I ended up coming to Savannah, obviously, with the townhouse and with Michelle. So I came to LifeBridge by chance. I was driving by, and I said, well, I'm going to stop in. So I went in, and Terry Adams, she greets everybody, done it for years. She was the first person that I met. she had a great smile, very welcoming, even gave me a big hug. And so I started to think, this might be home. This may be my community. And, you fast forward 3 years, I'm here. And, Chris and I were talking about it. Two things. The 3 years that I've been going here, I never wear long pants. I always wear shorts. And this is the first time since I've been coming here that I have long pants on. And Michelle and I were talking about it last night. She said, I think you really should wear long pants since you're going to be up talking in front of a bunch of people. So, that's why I'm wearing long pants. The other thing was that when I first came here, I saw people with baseball hats on and shorts. And that's not the way I went to church. I think, what the heck is going on here? But I'm still here 3 years later. And it was a blessing. And so one of the things that I learned, I'm in a small men's group, and we were talking about forgiveness one day. And I said, there's a person that I will never forget, can't forget. And Don Adams, like 2 weeks later, he sent me a text, and he said, hey, I was reading about this, and it was about forgiveness. It was in Matthew, and I think it's 16:4, but basically it says, you need, if God forgives you, then you need to forgive somebody else. That's a real brief statement of it, right? And I text Don and I said, thank you so much, but I don't think I can do this. I said, I can't. And he said, it's okay. He said, but you're kind of on a road now. So what I want to finish up with is this. And I don't want you to leave here with the impression that I'm fixed. I'm not. I'm far from being fixed. I drink. I do a lot of other stuff. Fortunately, I have a great relationship with my best friend Jim and Michelle. And I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to work on my anger. But I heard this in Alcoholics Anonymous a long time ago. And the gentleman said this. He said, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm better than where I was before. And that's me, right? I'm not going to tell you that I've forgiven this monster. I haven't. I'm working on it. I've been given the tools to do it. But I'm in a process. Like I said, I'm getting better. I'm getting closer. I pray that it helps soon, because it's a terrible way to live your life. And I was responsible for every decision I made. But if it wouldn't happen, I bet that I wouldn't have made some of the decisions that I did. But I'm in a great place right now. I've got great friends, great community. Chris walked me through this process. Keith did as well. And as I said, there were only two people in this room initially, Keith and then Chris, and now all of you. And I appreciate you being here. I really do. And, that's my story. And I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you.
It's important for you to hear this, that we're all on a journey. And the journey is about taking steps and following Jesus. We value relationships here at LifeBridge. We value relationships that have good, the bad, and the messy. Relationships that are truly good have mess in them. And we've been walking this journey, these roads, with a whole bunch of people. And maybe you're here today and you don't have Scott's story, but you have a story. And the thing with stories is our past is a lot of times we hold on to them. We keep a tight grip on them because we don't want anybody to know. We don't want anybody to hear about it. And attached to that is shame and guilt. Some things you've done, some things was done to you. But we hold on to it. And it takes up space, residence in our heart, in our mind. It's things we think of often. If I could just get beyond it, if it would have never happened, then maybe I wouldn't be here. Like we live in this world, and it consumes our thoughts. And we just hold on to it. Did you say this in the beginning? We're as sick as our secrets.
Well, I did in the first service. I forgot about this.
So you missed it, but he said this in the first service. He learned in AA that you're as sick as your secrets. If you're sitting here and you have like secrets residing in you, they hold space. They take capacity. And the hope from these unforgettable stories week in and week out is that you would take a step. Is there something that's holding on to you? Maybe you're holding on to it and it's time to let go. You let go by speaking it out. And so in just a moment, I'm going to pray over Scott and his life because he's just poured out something that he's held onto for a long time. Something in his life has captivated his thoughts, it's controlled him. He just let go of it. And I'm going to pray that God begins to fill those places, that forgiveness is ahead of him. Usually at churches, you hear the wrapped up story, the person who's been, I've got through this, I've done that, but not here at this church. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to share your story and be like, God's not done. He's still working. And maybe this morning you need the confident encouragement that if he can do it, so can you. If he can let go, so can you. So I'm going to pray for Scott, and then I'm going to pray for you. While I'm praying, we have a prayer team that's going to line up here. They're going to come up in the front of this room. There'll be 3 or 4 of us, 5 of us, maybe 10 of us. I don't know by the time I stop praying. But this morning might be your morning to take a step. To walk towards someone that you've never met before, maybe to someone you've seen before, I don't know, and just say, hey, I want to let go. I want to release it. I don't want to hold on to it anymore. And let them pray over you. Let them encourage you. Let them strengthen you. And maybe you can walk out of here today with something that you've been carrying for a long time and it be gone. You be free of it, forgiven of it. Let me pray for us. God, I thank you so much for Scott and his willingness to be obedient to you. God, this morning has been a journey. In fact, a 3-year journey of him hearing the first time about forgiveness. And then 3 years later, God, you've empowered him and strengthened him to do what he thought would never be possible, to release what he's been holding on to. God, this morning, he has poured out, he has let go, he has shared a secret that has made him feel sick, shameful, it's made him question, it's caused him to make choices, to run, to hide, to experience guilt and shame. He's released it this morning, and the power that it had over him is no more. It has no more control over him. It has no strength over him. It can no longer remind him of what if someone finds out because he has released it. And so God, that space that is now empty, that space that is now freed up, God, I pray that you pour into him. Remind him that it is your strength. Remind him, as you told Paul, God, that he's been freed from something. It is your strength that he can rest in. It is your strength that you use. It is your strength that will give him the ability to move forward and even walk in freedom and forgiveness. God, I pray that you would remind him that he is your child. Would you remind him that he is your son? God, as he thinks of what he's done, as he was reminded of his past, would he look to you and see eyes of joy? A father who loves, a father who forgives, and a father who stands with him as he takes his next steps. And I pray that he leaves here today with the feeling of freedom, with the feeling of forgiveness. God, I also pray for the person in this room this morning who's carrying the weight of the world, who's holding a burden that they can no longer carry on their own. God, would you give them the strength and the confidence that today is the day to let it go? God, would you use Scott's story to be a story of encouragement? That whatever they've held on to, whatever they've kept, today will be the day they can walk in freedom. And God, we trust that when we give you our story, when we no longer hold on to what we possess, but we give it to you, God, you take it and use it for your good. God, would you take the things we hold on to? Would you allow light to shine upon those dark places? That we can walk in freedom and see your hand in our life. We can trust that you have good in store for us. Would you allow those to experience that freedom, that peace, that joy that only you can give when we trust you completely? God, we love you so much. We trust you that you have good in store for us. It's your honor, I pray. Amen.